All right, last video, we're gonna talk about a cylinder, which is essentially a tall box where you curve the edges, how to make something into an archway, and how to shade using a light source. So here we go. The cylinder, just like I said before in the last one, where we dealt with the sidewalk and some other details, everything in 2-point perspective starts with the box essentially. So I'm gonna create a box by starting with the corner. 2-point perspective always starts with a corner, and then you connect the corner to your vanishing points, because in 2-point perspective the vertical lines stay vertical and the horizontal lines go to a vanishing point. So I have my vertical corner, my horizontal lines go to a vanishing point. The sides of my box need to be parallel to that first corner. So I'm going to draw those, make sure my ruler is flush with the edge of my paper so that it gives me nice straight lines like so. And then all I need to do, I don't need these to go all the way to the edge. I can get rid of those, make it a little more separate so you can see. All I need to do to make the curves is to follow along the outside edge, making sure my curve touches all 3 of those lines, and the same thing up here. So I'm going to curve this edge here. Now this reminds me of like an old silo like at my grandpa's farm, but he had this dome top silo. Do they even have this anymore? I don't even know. And then there was like these things that came down, so something like that. Now there's no line in a cylinder, right? It's a smooth change, so I'll get rid of that center line, but I needed it to know what this curve should be so that it looked believable in perspective. Now if my light source is over here, my shading is going to be lighter on this side, darker on this side. So as this sits, my horizon line would still be there. As this sits, I'm going to add darker shading away from the light source, and then my shading will lighten as I come around like so. And I like to shade, this is not my best shading, this is not a shading demo by far, but I do like to shade with my pencil by holding it on the opposite end of the lead, because what happens with graphite, if you want to sound fancy in the art world, is by holding it there I can create sort of a softer touch, and I can control the pressure. And notice as I'm shading not in rows, but I'm using the same direction and then varying my pressure gently to lighten that as it comes around, so it looks more rounded now. Now, if I wanted to make an archway here, for example, before I had, oops, that used to be there, I found the midpoint, I drew the line straight up, and I created the pitched roof. Now, if I wanted this to be an archway, just like I did here, it's the same kind of thing, where I connect this and just make my curve touch all 3. So if I do that, I can get rid of these. Maybe now this starts to come down, doesn't make sense there, but you can see I sort of have this arched edge here, something like that. And then I can, maybe I do a little arch here. Sure, I could do, let's see, I want a vertical line. Always use your ruler, make sure it's vertical. We'll go right there. I'm going to connect this to the top of my door, and then curve it like so, so that it looks like it's in perspective, and maybe I have a little fancy window like that, so I can get believable things in perspective. So I can do archways. Again, it doesn't make much sense on this house, but it would be if this were like a monument type house and I have things like this. So shading to the side. Now if this is from the side, I would need to do a darker shading over here, for example. And I can go a couple different directions and just keep going over it if I want to build the value enough that I want this to look darker. But the idea is that my shading should follow the direction toward the vanishing point. That's going to make a big difference. If I shade this horizontally, it's not going to make much sense. So I'm just going to do a little bit here. And then say over here, if I'm shading in this direction and I want it lighter, my shading should actually follow the direction of that vanishing point, or be vertical, because vertical lines always stay vertical. So the vertical here works, but then a little bit of shading here. Again, not in rows, kind of go randomly in different directions. If I wanted bricks, my bricks could kind of go like this, and then the ones below start in the center, and they just sort of round. I'm just going to do a couple rows, you know. And you know, they're bricks, they're a little messy, so maybe I kind of vary the pressure a little bit, something like that. Okay, great, thanks. Why aren't you stopping?